All right, well, here we are again.
Yes.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Two Beards in a Bible. I'm John Swaino.
I'm Dave Tenney.
And we're going to look into the Bible together, and hopefully you'll tag along with us.
Yeah. This is the post-COVID edition.
Yeah, indeed.
John and I both had COVID, and I've been over for a while, and John's a couple of 3 weeks.
Yeah. If I cough in your ear, I'm sorry. But we'll, as we always kind of mention that, as we go through these things, we're learning as well. So learn along with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this time we're going to continue on, and last time we were in the book of Matthew, and now we're going to go over to John chapter 7. And the first thing we're going to talk about, actually, is just the first, the first 9 verses. Talk about Jesus' brothers. And if we get through that, then we're going to flip over to Luke chapter 9 and talk about Jesus' journey a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and read these first 9 verses, and then John and I will, chew the fat for a while.
Pick it apart.
Yeah, we'll pick it apart. Right or wrong, right? We're going to pick it apart. It says, after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he did not want to walk in Judea. I like, in the King James there, it says he did not want to walk in Jewry.
Oh.
Which I thought was interesting. He says, because the Jews sought to kill him. Now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. His brothers therefore said to him, depart from here and go into Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For even his brothers did not believe him. And Jesus said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it, and its works are evil. You go up to this feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come. And when he had said these things to them, he remained in Galilee. So first thing there, he talks about that he was walking around in Galilee, and he didn't want to. And here it says Judea. The King James says Jewry. I think the idea is that this time there were a lot of Jews that were really upset with Jesus.
Yeah. And everything has a time and its purpose, and things had to be done. And Christ understood that. And we'll see several times in the reading today, where he kind of ducks out of the way and avoids them. Not that he's afraid of them, not that he couldn't call legions of angels and take care of them right then and there, but there was a job to be done that he was sent to do by the Father, and he had to complete those things.
Yeah, and he had to do it in the way it needed to be done. Mm-hmm. And like you said, he couldn't just jump to the end. It's interesting that and he says this later, but his brothers, they want him to come out openly. But God does things in his time, and it's we want things to be done, right, for whatever selfish reasons we have.
Right.
We want them done right now.
And why wouldn't God do this? And why wouldn't God fix this and make this happen faster? And it just reminds me that God's ways are higher than our ways, as Isaiah says.
Yes.
And I heard a sermon one time that I've probably mentioned 1,000 times that talked about whittling on God's end of the stick.
Yeah. Yep.
And that comes to mind as well.
Yeah. Can't whittle on God's end of the stick. I've heard our friend Jonathan Wyatt, he said that many times. Uh-huh. Don't whittle on God's end of the stick. And that's a good way to put it. So in verse 2, it says that the Jews' Feast of the Tabernacles were at hand. And that was, the instructions of that are I'm going to turn over in Leviticus chapter 23. We learn about the Feast of the Tabernacle. Let me see here. don't often go to Leviticus because most of it has to do with the I guess the details of the old law,
Yeah.
and we're not under that today, so there's not a lot of call for it. So it's going to start in verse 39. Which of course I got to turn one more page. It says on the 15th day of the 7th month, and on our calendar that's like September and October. Is about the time, so it's in the fall. He says, "When you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep the feast of the Lord for 7 days, and on the first day there shall be a Sabbath rest, and on the 8th day a Sabbath rest. And you shall take yourselves on the first day the fruit of beautiful trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days, and you shall keep it as a feast of the Lord for 7 days in a year. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it on the seventh month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So Moses declared to the children of Israel the feast of the Lord. So that's what this thing that Jesus is going to, this Feast of Tabernacles, that's what it is. It's the Jews keeping that still.
Right.
And, when I think about dwelling in booths, I'm thinking about like going to McDonald's and camping out, right?
Right.
What's a booth?
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah. I've never even caught that before.
Yeah, so like the little bit of studying I've done, it's like, and it's from that text, but they would make like dwellings, and they would stand up like tree branches and different stuff, and they would just like dwell in like this tree branch structure.
Okay.
I believe there are some places where they still try to keep this. I believe they, like in Israel, they still try to do something like this.
That would make sense, in the Mosaic time.
Yeah.
Being that where they were, I suppose that would make sense that they would do those things to kind of, because God said so.
Yeah. Well, one commentator said that it's like part of it was like whether you were rich or poor, when they dwelled in booths, they were all in the same kind of living situation.
There you go.
It was kind of a unity thing. So, anyways, that's what they were doing.
So why do you think Jesus would not want to go to this feast? What would
He didn't like what they were serving.
There you go.
I don't think that's it.
I was thinking that it had to do with, and we see that kind of recurring idea that Christ is kind of going against what the Jews at the time are doing, showing, foreshadowing maybe of the new law, that this is no longer what is going to happen, and also showing his authority. I mean, he is God incarnate, and but it is interesting. It is interesting that he shied away from those things.
But after a few days, he does go. We read later that he does go up there.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of goes up there, kind of incognito,
right?
In secret. The other thing I read about this is it's like they did different things on different days of these 7 days, and one of the things we'll touch on again later, but they had this like ceremony to where they would take water from the pool of Siloam, and they had this golden pitcher. Did you read about this? Any of this?
No.
Stuff? They'd take this golden pitcher and they'd scoop water, and as part of the last day, they would pour water out on the ground and ask blessings of God for like rain for the next year. And there was all these different things that they kind of did that went along with this.
Uh-huh.
And later on, I'm going to bring that up again.
Any of those things added to, like what they've been
Possibly.
I mean, mankind surely wouldn't add to God's word.
Oh, we wouldn't. I think we would.
I think history proves that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's it's a thing that you have to be super careful with because it's so just because something's good doesn't mean that that's something God said that we are supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I think that as we see him talking to the Pharisees and talking to the Jews of the time, we see him talking a lot about not doing things just in a superficial way.
Yeah.
And not just for the show of it.
Yeah.
And that tends to be, I mean, it was true for mankind then.
Yeah.
It's true for mankind now. A lot of the things that we see in the religious world are for superficial show.
They are.
And we're right in the season right now where we're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah, well, in fact, this is airing at the end of January, but, right now we're actually recording this right around Christmas.
Right.
And, and Christmas is one of those things where, really, I mean, for somebody to personally celebrate Christmas, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
If you want to take that as a time to remember the birth of Christ, there's nothing wrong with that. It's when we start binding it on other people that we have to do this. And that's what's happened.
Or when we take it to be something that is
More
needful.
Yes.
And there are those that their entire religious worship to God revolves around Christmas, Easter.
Yeah. And I even think that's kind of going away. I mean, you watch modern movies that are Christmas movies, and it's the holiday tree.
Right.
I've heard that a lot of times. So, I mean, as our society tries to move away from Christianity, it seems that anything that sounds like Christ, they want to get rid of.
Right.
So, you'll see those signs that say, "Put the Christ back in Christmas." Well, Christ was never really in Christmas,
right?
To be honest, but
Yeah, I have no, I have no warm fuzzies left for the Christmas season myself, but not that I, again, we give gifts to our children and so on, but we don't make it a religious holiday. And in as much as we see I don't know, because you see the world stepping away from Christ, as you said, and they're removing Christ's name from things. Although he never asked to be put into that in the first place, so I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I'm not either.
But I'm not happy that people are trying to forget the Lord.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that at all either. Although, the one thing that Christmas isn't a thing. For a lot of people, it's a thing where the one time a year where they think about religious things.
Right.
And really, Christians, that's the life of a Christian is thinking about religious things.
Right.
It's Christmas all year round for a Christian.
Every Christmas, there's always those that will come out and go to services on that one day, and if they happen upon the Lord's church, they kind of sometimes get a surprise because the service isn't what they're expecting.
Yeah, we don't put a lot of emphasis on secular holidays.
Yeah,
but like I said, I do know some people who don't do anything. They don't exchange gifts. They don't have a tree. Listen, we have 3 trees.
Oh man, you're a real heathen. Huh? Yeah. Now we have had trees in the past. It has gone ebb and flow with that in our house. I've always enjoyed hiking out into the woods and getting my own tree and bringing it in. That's something that I've enjoyed, but as time's gone on, I've this makes a big mess. So I've kind of avoided it. The past few years we haven't had a tree.
Yeah.
And it's just not anything that anyone in our household has desired. So we just haven't done it.
Hasn't been a big deal.
It's not a protest or anything.
No.
So.
But that's kind of what it seems like we can use our modern example of Christmas.
Yeah.
Which is it is modern because it's probably only been a thing I think it really turned into a thing probably in the 19th century. That was when it really picked up steam.
I studied it once, and I won't remember much of it, but it morphed out of some pagan worship and so on, and the Catholic Church boiled in there as well, and the mass for atonement of your sins for the.
One thing that Catholics do really good is they would go into a place and say, "Oh, we see you're sacrificing to this deity. Well, now we're going to come up with a Bible story around it.
Let's tax that."
Yes, and let's put a tax on it. They had their act together. There's no doubt about it. But I think the Jews kind of did that with some of their, some of the things got probably added to that weren't originally meant to be there.
Yeah.
Boy, we're at almost 16 minutes already. How did that happen?
Yeah, I delayed you.
So, verse 3, he said, his brothers therefore said to him, depart here and go into Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. For even his brothers did not believe him. Man, that's hard.
Yeah.
Who were his brothers?
Those that I'm assuming that this is those that grew up with him.
I think so, and I wrote down Matthew 13:55 because there's a list here of who his brothers were. Matthew 13:55. It says, "Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas?" And we know two of those, James and Judas. Two of his brothers were later went on to become followers of Jesus. So, so that's who I assume is the brothers he's talking about there.
And I guess when you think of family, it is harder for, I guess, family to see past. They see you every day. They grow up with you, and then to come to the realization that their brother is
the Son of God.
That's. You can understand where there'd be some cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. Later on, you see that at least two of them become his disciples, and they had to have, they grew up with this guy who never did, who lived perfectly.
Yeah.
Who was just like the perfect kid. They must have reflected on that some.
I mean, those that listened to Jesus as a boy when he was in the synagogue speaking, they took note that there's something special here.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that they grew up in the shadow of that, and had to see that he was different.
So so the other thing is I'm thinking about, this Feast of Tabernacles is coming up, and this was probably a thing they all went together as a family every year. It was like a family vacation, a family trip, they went on. And now Jesus has got these disciples and he's performing miracles. And
and even there, that you have perhaps that push for him to go and make a show.
Yeah.
And so if you can do these things, go show everybody.
Yeah.
And here he's hanging back because it's not yet his time. Everything in his time.
And it says that statement he says my time has not yet come.
Yeah.
I mean he says that so many different times throughout here, and especially through the book of John.
Right.
That phrase is uttered many times. So his brothers don't believe him. They're like, okay, well, why don't you just go out and do this openly? And Jesus says, my time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, looking at the next statement there in verse 7, the world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it, that its works are evil. I'm thinking that it's, his time for the things that he needs to say are, and do, is not yet come.
It's in the future.
Right, but they're living in the now, and they're living in the current, whatever situation is. They're it's their time. Those that are not seeking after the Lord, They have their time, they have their life that they're living, and they have their opportunity. I think that there's room for the thought of there being an opportunity for them to come,
Yeah.
for them to open their eyes and to see things.
That's a good. I kind of puzzled over that because
It is some interesting language there that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus says, "You will go. You go up to the feast." It says, "I'm not yet going to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come." And when he said these things, he remained in Galilee. So we got about 10 minutes left here, John. So let's go over and flip over to Luke chapter 9.
Okay.
And we'll get through that, and then we'll be done with this episode. Luke 9:57 through 62. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Are you good enough to read it?
I think so. We'll find out. In verse 57, now it happened as they journeyed on the road that someone said to him, Lord, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Then he said to another, follow me. But he said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and preach the kingdom of God. And another also said, Lord, I will follow you, but let me first go and bid them farewell who are at my house. But Jesus said to him, no one having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God.
All right. A lot of different examples that kind of are heading towards the same the same point. So Jesus, at this point, so he leaves his brothers and now he's on the road, and he's kind of slowly working his way to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these people that want to come up and follow him.
There's some notoriety there. And,
oh yeah, yep.
And you can see that today, how easily people follow those that are maybe have some fame behind them or some notoriety, looking to ride the coattails of somebody.
And some people think that, I have to pick on old Joel Osteen, but, that this idea of, if you become a Christian, just everything's going to go smooth in your life, and
right,
and you're going to have money, and
we have that same thought in our minds. Many do. In the religious world, even those that are in the church may, when tough times come, they dwindle away because they're expecting that there's going to be some bit of ease because they have named Christ.
Or there's going to be a miracle that's going to take them out of the bad situation.
Right.
And I'm not discounting the power of prayer, because prayer does work, but sometimes things don't go the way you want them to go.
Right. And all, when we pray to the Lord, and we hope, as I've prayed in these past weeks many times for myself and for my friends that have been stricken with this COVID, that things would improve, and that if it be His will, that we would continue to be able to work together and so on. But in realizing, I've come to realize what I think is a good way to think about it, is that the Lord's will for mankind far surpasses anything that happens on this earth. Whether we take the next breath or whether we live the next day, His will for mankind is that they seek after Him.
Yeah.
And that they are with Him in eternity. And that doesn't have a whole lot to do with our little lives.
No.
And not that there's not hope, and not that we can't pray, and not that those prayers will not be answered, but I think we often think in the here and now too much. We tend to really latch on to those Joel Osteen type teachings that, well, if I do this, if I love the Lord, then my life's going to be easier. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
And I also, this always reminds me of, we're speaking of people that say, I will follow you wherever you go. You think of someone who's just been baptized.
Yeah.
Think of someone who is coming to Christ and starting to understand what must be done. I think it's so important that as Christians we share with them the idea of counting the cost.
Yes.
Because all too many times we get into it. I'll follow Jesus anywhere, and then life gets hard.
Yeah.
And then before we know it,
they're gone. They gone.
Away. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I mean, you think about Jesus. He makes this point. He says, the foxes and the birds got a place to live.
Yeah.
But Jesus was born homeless.
Mm-hmm.
He's born in a barn, in a manger, feed trough, and his life, it doesn't seem like he ever owned anything.
Right.
And
we live in the lap of luxury in this country, in this time, and hopefully it'll never happen. But you could imagine in your mind a time when perhaps being a Christian is not a popular thing.
Yeah.
And perhaps in order to be able to worship like the Lord has commanded, perhaps you have to leave those things that you have worked for and have become accustomed to.
Yeah.
And that's always in the back of my mind. How would I react if I just suddenly had to get up and leave? I mean, think of those that in the 1930s Germany. They did just that. Maybe not for religious reasons, but
right.
maybe not as Christians, but nonetheless, those people had to get up and leave everything that they had known. And I think Christ is kind of pointing that out and giving us that hint here that this is what you're getting into.
Yeah, you could go down this road.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about let me see. He talks about the dead burying their own dead.
Yeah,
I've heard this explained.
Strong statement.
Yeah, and of course he's talking about let the spiritually dead bury the physically dead.
Right.
I think is the idea.
Right, and there goes the idea again. We put a lot of stock in these human bodies.
Yeah.
We go so far as to embalm them to preserve.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
I never figured that out.
Right. And we get into, we spend thousands upon millions of dollars burying our dead.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Oh, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
And then he talks about, he says, nobody who puts their hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom. And I've plowed before.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never plowed, maybe you've mowed the yard. Right? Because it's the same thing.
Right.
If you're plowing a field, if you're constantly looking back to see what the plow's doing, you don't know where you're driving all over the field.
Yeah.
If you're mowing the yard and you're trying to keep your line straight, you can't look back and see how you're doing.
Right.
You gotta look ahead. I got another scripture here. That kind of I think goes along with this. So it's Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." And the idea is that we need to endure as Christians, and I believe that's what Jesus is teaching here.
Mm-hmm.
He's teaching that exact same thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When we become a Christian, it's a responsibility that we have. It's a contract that we made with God to say, yeah, I'm gonna follow your commandments, and even if they're not popular, I'm gonna follow your commandments.
Now there's a hymn in most of the hymnals in the churches of Christ that say, "I want to be a worker for the Lord."
Yeah.
And you think about a worker. If you're in the position to hire someone to do a job, and you're watching them, if they're distracted, if they're looking down at their phone all day, if they're not getting the work done, what are you going to do with them? What is going to be the response eventually? You're going to do away with them. You're going to fire them.
Or make them a manager.
Maybe. Nowadays.
Yeah.
But the Lord's also looking. If we're going to be a worker for Him, if we're going to be in His kingdom, He's looking to see how we're if we're focused.
Yep,
And-
absolutely.
And this is what we need to be focused on, not everything else.
Well, that about finishes up for today.
All right. Well, it's been great talking with you, and I
Yep.
hope that those that listen are listening in will find it to be profitable as well. Until next time.
Yep, thank you.